Good afternoon to everyone. Today we have a very special guest, um, someone who is no stranger to Trinidad and Tobago. He's been spending the past 2 months with us, spending time with the people on the ground, getting to know Trinidad and Tobago in ways that some of us are too shy to get to know. Christmas List, it's wonderful to see you. Your face has become synonymous with Trinidad and Tobago, and that could only be a compliment. It means to see that we've accepted you into our fold. How are you doing today? Chris, your
Hello,
volume.
hello,
Okay.
Chris. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, welcome. Thank you. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share some airtime with you. Thank you for a great intro.
Before you
Right.
continue, Farid, Christmas, tell me, what's the title of that track?
Um, that's a good question. I'm not even certain if it's confirmed yet. The two artists have been putting it together over the last 2 days, and we're recording a video for it tomorrow. So you're one of the first people to hear it. So I'd have to confirm with them.
Okay, I'll call it Little Black Boy just for now.
That's the name for the time being. Yes.
Yeah. Go
So,
ahead, Farid.
so Chris, we actually got the privilege of making the song public in more ways than one or two.
You're the first. You're the first one to hear it. So I know both artists are listening to the show right now, and I'm sure they have a big smile on their face.
Well, I'm happy to give them some due and some publicity in that regard. But
Yes.
I must say, it's the show is about you this afternoon. In no way am I trying to hog the spotlight in any way. I'm just trying to spend some time with you and to let the our listeners out there hear from you in terms of what you're about and the work that you do. Tell me something. Maybe we can start with a small little bio. I don't want you to call names in terms of exposing your family names and so on. We live in an era when social media allows us entry into everyone's lives. So you don't need to call the name of your relatives, but
Yeah.
you're a family man, I gather. You're married,
Most
you have
definitely.
children.
Yeah. Happily married for over 15 years now to my wife. I have no problem saying her name, Grace. We have three incredible children, 9, 15, and 18 years old now.
How do your children relate to you in terms of the work that you do? Sometimes if you're all around the world doing what you do, two things: you're not at home, and then you're away from your children. How do they relate
Yes.
to that? Do they accept that this is the life that you live and the risk involved?
Yeah, this. So I'm not new to travel. I've been traveling since way before they were born. I think it's because it's sort of commonplace. I'm. They've never voiced their concern to me. I think they're aware that I'm traveling. I'm doing what I'm doing, but it no doubt is definitely the most difficult part about this whole thing is being away from family. And I'm normally not away this long. I normally travel for 3 to 4 weeks, then I'm home for three to 4 weeks. So this is the longest I think I've ever been away from home.
Okay. Has this strain that you've been on, and I'm using the word strain in terms of the pressure that you've been undergoing in the last few weeks, um, how has that affected you emotionally and mentally? Do you feel weaker for it or stronger for it, or you're just taking it in stride?
Yeah, it's been because it feels like it's all happened so fast. Like I was unaware I was going to be arrested and detained. I didn't have the mindset in which fear was involved. I know I'm presuming I'm not a criminal, but I'm presuming that when somebody commits a crime, they know at some point that justice is going to catch up with them, and having that on the back of their mind could be stressful. Me, on the other hand, I didn't do anything wrong, so I didn't have that notion of being caught per se. But I mean, while being in jail, there's no doubt that your mental health is tested, and that has to do with the people that are around you when being in detainment. I find a lot of the stress that I had during my week or 6.5 days behind bars, was sort of the people that I was with, like dealing with their problems as well as my own, was difficult. You know, to be honest with you, I don't think I've really sat down enough to think about what's happening. It's just been go, 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 go. I think once I get home to my family is going to be the real test when I'm back to day to day life. And this kind of media and stuff like this is no longer a part of my day to day life.
Right. I gather what you're saying is in terms of the detention at the police cells, what would have been mentally and emotionally therapeutic for you would have been your interaction with persons you shared common space with there in terms of counseling them and letting them, comforting them and meeting them in their space where they are.
Yes.
So it's almost as you all share common grief and you are strength to them in as much as they may have been some strength to you.
Yes, and the opposite, stress as well. You know, you get to know a bunch of make new friends, and you worry about them. And it's crazy, but anybody that hasn't spent time behind bars wouldn't understand. You know, when you're with people, new people for 6 days, those are some real friends. For the most part, you know more about them because there's nothing else to do besides talk about, you know, your life and your family and etc. So the example of one of the people that was a cellmate with me was only 18 years old, the same age as my son, and he was very emotionally distraught and definitely dealt with the mental side of it. And me being there, I thought was like heaven sent for him, but no doubt it added a lot of extra stress to my plate as well.
All right. In the time that you've been in Trinidad, you would have interacted with persons from East Border Spain. I would imagine that some of the persons you were in the cell with there would have been persons who would have been coming out of that demographic. East Border Spain meaning Duncan, Nelson, Prince Street, that sort of area.
Yes.
Right. And what you would have noticed in your dialogue is those individuals are very young persons that you say your 18-year-old son's age, but some of them may have not very strong social connections in terms of the home, a family structure, a bond that people there to support them, and they get that love and commitment from the community.
Yes.
Why do you think that there's such a strong communal bond in East Border Spain and in environments where people are under pressure in terms of unemployment, in terms of stress, in terms of lack of opportunity? What in your view, contributes to that communal bond?
First and foremost, I think they're sort of within the same tax bracket. You know what I mean? In terms of earnings, I think a lot of them have the similar problems. From what I heard, it's normally a single parent household. Um, Maybe father's not as involved as he should be. This is a common denominator I heard while being behind bars. And also, you know what's different in your country opposed to my country is like in Toronto, it's very normal to move quite often. Whereas what I find here is people live the majority of their life in the same area. Some of them even in the same apartment or same home. So I mean, you've grown up around the same people. You went to school. Some people go to church or the mosque, and you're seeing the same people every single day on the street. And I also find that that area is a lot more like pedestrians, people walking. Whereas me in my country, you know, half of the year is cold. For the most part, we're not walking. We're jumping in our car and driving away. So I think those are a few reasons why it's a very tight knit community. Everyone knows each other without a shadow of a doubt.
Tell me something. Let me interject here a little bit before we continue. You're a guy who traveled a lot of countries around the world and stuff and thing. Was that intentional to be involved with the people on the ground, if I should ask it like that, or were you just a traveler and while traveling, you saw what you saw and decided to have some sort of meetings with these kind of people just to hear how they are living and what I cause them to live like how they live?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, I don't think it was pre-planned. I feel like I can get along with anyone, rich, poor, and anyone in between. What I get enjoyment out of it is like conversations. So, I mean, in my day to day life, if I look back to when I was 18 years old, I'm the kind of man that would sit beside a homeless man bring him lunch and ask him questions. I would also do the same thing if I saw a man with a Porsche at a gas station. I'd run over to them and ask, like, how did you get this beautiful car? For me, there's something about just talking to people. And YouTube came, you know, decades after that. But now YouTube allows me to do something very similar and share with the world.
Thank you so much.
When you spend time in the communities and you meet people, are you seeing a common denominator among those that are poor and suffering and a common denominator in terms of your recognition of they come from sometimes mostly single parent homes, or they come from an environment where they've lost a loved one to murder, or they have relatives who are in prison. What are some of the common trends that you've noticed among persons of that demographic?
Yeah, everything that you sort of mentioned and a lot more. The whether they'll admit it or not, the constant fear of being killed. One of the questions I've asked in every community I went into was like, on your two hands, are you able to tell me how many close friends or loved ones have passed away to crime? And most of the time, people will tell you that it's more than 10 people. So, I mean, there's no doubt there's an issue, and it's a common denominator in a lot of these communities. Now, that might be one of the reasons why they're closer knit, and why they've dealt with the similar issues, and they can understand each other and what they've gone through. In one of the last communities I went to, they said they no longer go to funerals. First, because it could be targeted from the opposition, and second, like it's almost like they don't have any more tears to cry. Right, so it's a very sad state.
So when you say they no longer go to funeral, two reasons you offer that they are target. When we say opposition, we mean opposition in terms of rival gangs or their enemies.
Yes.
But also they no longer they lend. So you're saying that sometimes they lose a sense of loss and a sense of feeling. It's almost like they become immune to pain. It's so regular that
Yes.
you lose someone, so it's just another one.
Yes, and also I should mention, people have told me the stigma. Stigma is a word that I've heard in every single video I created. And when talking about stigma in relation to a burial, even if you are not a participant in a gang, you showing up to a gang member funeral could put you in that category amongst police that are watching. So that the word of stigma, and you being treated as a criminal because you're from a certain neighborhood, whether you are a criminal or not.
So it's almost as you're saying, if it is I attend the funeral of a known criminal who is dead, it's almost as if I sympathize with him and
Yes.
his membership. It's no longer, so it really is a stigma. So in other words, you're guilty by association.
Yes. I can use an example. One of the videos that I put out, when I was filming it, a gentleman that was not in a gang, he tapped me on the shoulder. He said, "Chris, I'd love to talk about the positive I'm doing in the community. I chose not to go that route. I have a 9 to 5." And I put him on camera, and I was so happy to hear the opposition, like not the opposition, like, the opposite route that this person had taken in life. I filmed it. I published the video. In the following day, I got a call from the man saying, like, I need to take it down. He's going to lose his job. Guilty by association, even though he had nothing but positive things to say in the video. People do not want those type of people working at their job place. And when I say those type of people, I mean people just from bad communities, hot spots, as you call them here in Trinidad.
What you would notice, and I'm making the point whilst you've made it. If I come from a certain demographic, if I'm from East Port of Spain, if I'm from Mova, Laventil, Sealots, if I'm from Maloney, La Hoquita, and that is just the east-west corridor in Port of Spain. If you're from Embarcadero in San Fernando, if you're from certain places in Point Fortin, in other words, people, employers, and the business community don't want to be associated with people or employees who come from a certain demographic. It's almost as if I need to apply. If I'm applying for a job and I'm from East Port of Spain, I put an address that is in West Port of Spain. Because when the employer looks at the CV and he sees, well, this person is from West Port of Spain, his mindset and his attitude towards that individual would be different. But if you put an address that is in East Port of Spain, then people say, oh, you're from the Beatum. So you're a gangster family, you're from a gangster community. So he's immediately afraid of you because he's associating you with the wrong element.
Yes.
And that is a stigma that so many of the young people can't escape. Because they come from a certain community, it's almost as if no good is expected of them or expected from them. But there's a lot of talent I noticed that you attended the Panyards in East Port of Spain, Desperados, Massey All Stars, uh, BP Renegades. What are your impressions of the musical talent that you've interacted with? Through, let's say, perhaps we could start with the steel bands. What were your impression of the music? I know from coming from Canada, you would have had some exposure to steel band music.
Yes, for
But
sure.
how did you receive it in your spirit in terms of what do you like about it?
It's amazing. Bringing together a group of, I guess at some point they were strangers. For you know, for me, it's much more than the music. The music, as you guys say down here in Trinidad, it makes your paws raise. In Canada, we say you get goosebumps, those little dots on your arm that when you get excited. The music is incredible, phenomenal. The entertainment value of it is more than just music. It's a cultural thing that even myself, an outsider, can feel when I'm in the room. That's one very important part to keep the tradition moving and going forth. But possibly even more important than that is getting these kids excited about something. Having them. Not everyone wants to play football. Football is also a great example of a way to keep kids off the street doing something positive, but not everyone's into kicking a ball. So it's an incredible resource to have such talent available where kids can come off the street, not only learn how to read chords, they can learn how to play the steel pan and be a part of a team and a championship team at that. I met people that had traveled to dozens of countries, and if they looked back at their life without being a participant in the steel uh, pan, life would have gone a different direction totally.
Exactly. So, in other words, in these depressed communities, as they say, that stigma that nothing good could come of that area. The steel band industry and the steel pans and the steel bands are living testament to the fact that out of Bethlehem, as we say using biblical language, that something great and something long lasting and forever lasting can subsist and exist. Um, the same people that comprise these bands, Desperado Steel Orchestra, they come from the heart of Laventille. They've won 12 Panorama Championships between 1966 and uh, 2018 was the last time they won, I believe. David, you can correct me if I'm wrong in my stats. You're the man with the stats.
I think you're correct there.
Yeah. So what we've seen with Laventille is they produce this beautiful music, and the demographics and the people that comprise this band are people who come from these poor communities and who have the same common experience as the young people that you meet. And Desperados have found themselves in a situation where they've had to come out from the hills where they are, and fundamentally and luckily for them, the state has provided a space for them on George Street where they can now subsist away from gangland, as we say. But that doesn't, at the same time, what we're seeing is that something beautiful musically and aesthetically can come from that environment. You can actually meet people with genuine ability, um, and if given a structure such as the steel orchestra to subsist through, they can find a place and be the best, the very best they can be. And the same exists for Renegades. Renegades have won 13 Panorama titles. All Stars have won, I believe, 11 Panorama titles. So when we look at the numbers, Chris, you're looking at bands that won 13, 12, and 11. That's what, 36 titles. And this is East Port of Spain. This is the heart of gangland where people expect very little of. But yet still we have such rich talent and so many good things. But what we read about in the newspaper tends to be negativity. Um, I guess everybody likes a rebel. Everybody likes a Rambo character, somebody who goes against the face of the establishment, who challenges the establishment. And, you tend to highlight them for better or worse. Um, in the time that you've been here, surely you would have not just in terms of steel band music, but you would have interacted just like that song that we started the show with. You would have interacted with talented young men who would have had individual musical talents, and they produce that sort of music that we play there. Some people call it Trinidad music, and that's not a good connotation. But when we listen to the contents of the song just now, there was something very positive and very enlightening about it. What are your feelings about the young artists, those individuals that you meet, and who have a message and they want to bring that message across through song?
Yeah, there's no doubt there's exceptional talent in Trinidad, musical talent. It's not for everyone, but I mean, there's no doubt when I'm going through these neighborhoods, I find it. But the recurring theme, once again, is the music that sells the best or gets the most airtime or nightclub plays is that of a violent nature. You know what? Like, this is tough for us all to swallow. If we didn't grow up in a household, and I treat everyone as an individual, even going back to the steel pan, I think it's brilliant having resources like that where somebody can come off the street and do something positive and be a participant in a team or a band. Incredible. But we also have to remember that not everyone has two parents. And for those people that have two parents or even have one, the child might be responsible for some of the income coming into the household, even at a young age. So they might not have the time to be joining a steel pan, or they might not just have the interest. Going into the music now, not everybody is musically inclined. So it's a great way out if you have a top-notch talent. But if we look at the percentage of people in Trinidad that have that musical talent, it's a very small number. And what I find is, I'm not going to mention any names, even some of the biggest Trinidad artists in Trinidad, I don't think they get excitement out of singing negative music. It's what their block expects them to sing. And I'd go even further to say that I think there are people telling them what to sing because that's what sells best. Let's be honest, like blockbuster movies are the ones with the explosions and bullets flying. And like we've been taught from a young age that entertainment, um, like this is what we like. I'd be a liar if I told you I didn't listen to Trinidad music while I'm here, while I'm getting ready in the shower, and listen to it for 100% entertainment value. But if I really broke it down lyric for lyric, some real devilish type stuff. But I take myself away from it and just listen to it from an entertainment value. So getting back to your original question, there's definitely talent, but we know that most of these people could never perform in front of another neighborhood. They're stuck on their block, meaning they're not going to make an income. There's no revenue, no career from this, unless you're able to get out of the country and find somewhere safe to sing about the things that they're singing about.
Let me interject here. I've a lot of messages coming in from IAOG, Freedom is a Must, Anomaly, Music, the guys who put the music together. And like I guessed right, the title of the track is Little Black Boy by Anomaly and Kid Volt. The A Team 187 Gang, big up Chris. They're saying Upness, brother Upness. Suat Allen is sending lots of hearts. Uh, Great questions, great answers. Dwight, poverty equals crime. A hungry man will find a way to eat, and that way becomes normal. Real boss says real, real recognize real. And the final one is most of the youths feel trapped. Now, based on that final statement and based on the song that I've listened to, now I'm one of the media personalities who put a lot of effort and time into promoting local music. I listen to it in depth, and I know what is worthy for airplay, and I know I just like to promote and showcase what Trinbagonians can do. Now, question I want to ask you: you've been among these youths of various neighborhoods, and there's a similarity with all these within all these neighborhoods. Tell me, what do you gather from the youths? As I know they were happy that you came around, and that they probably were very happy also that you can tell a story of what they are feeling in these so-called quote unquote ghetto areas. I too live in an area where there are a lot of depressed youths, and I too wish I could have helped in some way to motivate and inspire them to do better. The song says that. Now, tell me from your perspective, by being among them, how do you feel in telling their story?
Yeah, over and over and over again, most of them don't want to be in the position they're in.
Hmm,
It's not by choice. You know, whether it be their father or grandfather or their uncle and cousin are criminals. They've been brought up with very little opportunity for choice. You know, I've had this conversation over and over again. Like, I'm a believer that you're not born evil. No one comes out of the womb thinking I want to hold a gun and rob and steal. So there's got to be different things, elements that played factors into your upbringing that sent you down the wrong path. And I'm also under the belief that if you're a 25-year-old that has some criminal history, it's not too far gone to think that you can, you know, rehabilitate and become a positive role model in your community. A lot of these kids just want a chance over and over again. They want a chance. They don't want to be here. But also, it's like they've been born into this.
hmm,
They know the street rules. They know much more than I know as to how to survive. And I think humans are born with that survival tactic. And what they're doing for the most part is just trying to survive.
I hear you.
And I want to be very clear that I don't side with the criminals. I'm not. I'm the man on the middle of the fence, saying that I would hope that there are alternate options because it's evident that there are people from these communities that look might run a radio station or become a doctor or a lawyer. But I also understand that there are hundreds or thousands of youth and kids in Trinidad today that are committing crimes because they feel like they have no other option.
Hmm. Does it make you feel, uh, what should I say, effortless in trying to assist them? Or I see you as the messenger, bringing the message to the fore for people who really don't know and who don't understand the cause of how they live. You know, it bothers me a lot to know that they will have to live that way to survive. And I know maybe you might see yourself as in a position not being able to assist physically or financially, but I think what you are doing, being the voice that brings out the story, about exactly what's happening with them, I think that is so very important.
You know what? I don't think the world is going to change based on my videos. I don't think the community or country will change.
Hmm.
But I mean, over the course of the last 3 years of doing this, I have seen individuals in my videos get help because of my videos. For example, my first video I ever filmed in Belize, not too far away from here, I went to a place, and the name of the video is Swamp People of Belize City. Now, this is about 100 homes that were illegally built, like they settled on a swamp,
Hmm.
and they built little shacks on stilts. Now, the video did well. I think it got twice the number of views as there are residents of Belize City, to give you an idea. So it's just, I think, around under 1 million views. And people were upset at me at the title. But what happened, I went back a year later, and the land has now been gifted to the 100 homeowners. So they have ownership. So now they can actually build proper homes. That wouldn't have happened if I didn't acknowledge the problem. One
Hmm.
gentleman in the video was actually chained to a house by his foot with a padlock, and he's in the video as well. And he had a drug problem that almost brought him to his death. His sister was locking him up during certain hours when she couldn't watch him. This is a grown man of he was about 25, um, and that man, upon the completion of my video and going live, got a 1 year residency at a drug rehabilitation center, which he completed 8 months of, and they gave him a free home thereafter. It's not a mansion. It's not the world's best home, but it's his. He has ownership. He has a job now.
Mhm.
So if I did not stumble into that community, and a lot of kids got free school scholarships in the community that were in the video. Now, if I didn't stumble into that community with my camera, am I the savior? No. But showing and recognizing that there's a problem often brings help. It might not be immediately,
Yeah.
but I do feel like I'm the messenger, and I do feel the responsibility. I become very emotionally attached to a lot of the people that I meet. I wish I could help more. But with a viewership as large as I'm getting, there are people watching my videos that can help. And some of them do raise their hand and do offer to help. So those are the type of people that I'm looking to network with.
I hear you. I hear you. And that's so nice of you. Farid.
Chris, I want to touch on a particular area here. Wh- what is happening in this country at this time is we're on the cusp of a general election. We're constitutionally due for the election by September of 2025. And the, the, the division in terms of the politicians that compete against each other for political office are skewed between two essential political parties. So you've spent enough time here to recognize that in Trinidad and Tobago, it's either you're red or you're yellow, in a manner of speaking. It's either you're supporting the party that is in the incumbent government, or you're supporting the party that is aspiring towards assuming that seat of power. So you as an individual, when you come to a place like Trinidad, what you would recognize is it's an Indo-Afro uh, complexity in terms of the percentile, the demographic. It's a huge amount of Afros and a huge amount of Indo-Trinidadians. We still live in peace. It's not like Pakistan. It's not like Israel and Palestine. It doesn't resort to warfare. It doesn't resort to violence. Trinidadians speak a lot. We like to voice our views and give our opinions, and the politicians are worse than the people on the street in that regard. I mean, unsolicited opinions we get. But I want to say this. Having said that, um, you are perceived in some circles to be highlighting gang life. Um, we know that you're not about that. The conversation for the past few minutes um, in no way carries that tone or that tenor that we think we see you in that light. But there are persons who would like to see you as someone who um, is promoting them, not in terms of their life, because I see it as you're highlighting where they are and therefore giving them a platform to be heard. So their weaknesses and their cries, their spirituality, the things that play on their mind. But in your videos, you carry that tone, and it comes through there. You give them a medium to express themselves. We wouldn't find mainstream media. I could tell you that I am not going into the areas that you went to host a program or to carry a program or interview anyone. I'm not that brave. What Chris can get away with, I can't. But allow me to read something here. And this is going to capture, I think, the politician's perception, or some politicians' perception, and some police officers' perception, meaning the office of the commissioner of police, I would imagine, and people in high office, how they perceive giving publicity to gangs. This is an article that was written as far back as 2019, February 20th, taken from the Trinidad Express. It's an article written by a reporter, Kim Budram, and it's the rubric is Gang Leaders Thrive on Publicity. Let me just read a small extract, and for the listening public. Criminologist Professor Ramesh Dirusaran has suggested deep introspection by the media in reporting on alleged gangsters, saying yesterday these people, like terrorists, usually thrive on recognition. He goes on to say, Dirusaran responded yesterday to criticism by Police Commissioner Gary Griffith of the media reporting on some aspects of crime, particularly gang-related crime and culture. I'm jumping a bit now. The Media Association responded. So this is the media house. The Media Association of Trinidad and Tobago responded to these observations by Ramesh Dirusaran, a known criminologist, and the then Commissioner of Police, Gary Griffith. The Media Association responded and said, The Media Association of Trinidad and Tobago responded that the duty of all journalists is to report all sides of a story, not just selected viewpoints. And it goes on to say that while the Commissioner of Police, Gary Griffith, is free to express his opinion on how journalists conduct their duties, MAT, which is the Media Association of Trinidad and Tobago, would like to remind the Commissioner of Police that freedom of the press is a cornerstone of our democracy. Matt said, adding that the Commissioner could be more temperate in his choice of words so as not to create the impression he is not in support of the free press. Having said that, Chris, I've just related a short dialogue in terms of we have criminologists and learned minds, intellectuals who study crime and study gang life. And they have the view that anytime we start giving them a platform or giving gang leaders a platform to express themselves, then it's almost that you're shining a light on them. And then the person, the membership, the young membership around them, they actually get a sense of hubris and they get a sense of an elevated sense of self, that they belong to something special, when really gangs are people that break the law. They are an anomaly. They do wrong things. Do you see yourself as a journalist? How do you see yourself? Are you an influencer, a journalist? What is your interpretation of the work that you do? What exactly?
I definitely no doubt look at myself as a journalist. I disagree with that statement wholeheartedly. Like, the evidence is here. Gangs have been around forever, right? Like since the beginning of mankind. Literally, social media is a relatively new issue. So I mean, to blame, I would go like polar opposite as to that statement. I think my videos would deter people from joining a gang when they see how sad of a lifestyle that they live with constant fear of death. Look, let's be honest. I did not interview every gang here, nor every gang member. A lot of gangs, or those that are referred to as gangs, said no, they do not want spotlight because they want to go about their criminality without police watching them. So it's a polar opposite approach. And look, if you want to find a true answer to this question, you need to ask gang members, because they're going to tell you whether they get great excitement off of being in front of the camera or not. But I mean, that person that wrote that story I guarantee they've never been a gang member. They've probably never even asked a gang member. So that's their opinion, right? It's like this, what we're going through right now is a piece of history, whether you like it or not. Unfortunately, most history in books starts with negativity, wars and famine and destruction, right? So I'm documenting what's happening right now today. Is my video going to encourage young kids to go drop out of football and steel pan to join a gang? It's ridiculous.
Right.
It's anything further. I've had, so many interactions with parents that have told me that their kids watch my videos and they sit next to the kids saying, look, you do not want to be like that. When I was a kid growing up, there was a whole problem with drugs. So we used to sit and watch people doing drugs in school, so the teacher can be like, don't do that. If you see the needle, and they would show you the needle in person, if you see this needle, stay away, right? And that made me, I've never tried a drug in my life, right? So look, people that join gangs are going to join gangs. They're not waiting for a YouTube video or somebody like myself to film a video to encourage them. That was predetermined from a very young age based on where they're from and what opportunities or lack thereof that they have in their life.
So it would be correct of me to say that it's never, and it has never been your intention to promote negativity when it is you carry a video, you make a video and highlight it on YouTube.
No, there's no promotion at all, right? My intent is to document what I see in every country. You'll notice if I'm in Pakistan, I film in a different way. If I'm in India, I'm filming the current problems. When I'm in Afghanistan, I'm filming the Taliban. I'm filming the issues that arise in a country, but not only the issues. Again, I filmed 25 videos in Trinidad. Most questions and most newspaper clippings about me are talking about gangs or gang related crime. Unfortunately, my least viewed video is the steel pan yard. I went to the 3 best steel pan yards on purpose, well planned out and researched. It's just people don't enjoy that type of content, but it's still not going to stop me. My intention is to show a very well rounded, I don't know how to put it, almost like an encyclopedia. When I leave, I don't know what book this is, I just grabbed it. When I leave, I want to have a video encyclopedia of what Trinidad and Tobago look like today. So if somebody 100 years from now looks back and wanted to look through the archive, this is going to be everything from the food, the music, the culture, to the crime. I've interviewed police as well. So you're getting a look from everything, not just related to gangs.
All right. Let me ask you this. Since you've been on bail and away from and you're no longer detained by the police, you're waiting a hearing before the court. Have you gotten any assurances from the law enforcement that they're going to be looking after you, ensuring that you're safe while you're here? Have they offered you any layer of protection?
No.
Okay. But do you feel safe in Trinidad when you walk the streets or when you're out there? Do you feel that, your life is at risk, or you feel you're at peace with yourself sufficiently that you don't think that people see you in a negative way or see you as a threat?
I say this, the far, far majority of people have been so supportive, loving, and they'll come talk to me. Some people want a hug. Some people just want a shoulder to cry on. I've gotten it all, right? But as a realist, I know that some people are angry at me. Those are normally the quiet ones, the ones that you really don't know that they're around. So I don't live my lifestyle in a manner that I'm fearful, but I'm also smart enough to know it only takes one person angry at you to end your life. I don't know if this is everyday occurrence here, but when I got bail, the press not only released the details as to how much was paid, but they also released the address in which I'm staying at. Like, there has been a lot of mainstream media publications as to sort of create me as an enemy. And I don't know if it's to encourage people to find me or to hurt me. But again, I'm just a man that doesn't live that type of lifestyle. I need to wake up every day with a smile on my face, and I walk down the street without overthinking it. But again, of course, it's always somewhere on the back of my mind that something could happen.
Right. Just for our international audience that is listening, the media ought not to have placed your address, Chris, in the public space, because that, whether for better or worse, and just for the sake of your own security, your address should not have been placed in the newspaper. That was wrong of them, and that's for obvious reasons. No one should know, or the general public ought not to know exactly where you live. The court would have wanted an address so they know where the police can find you if they need to have a dialogue or if they need to protect you. But in terms of publicizing that is a no-no. It's almost as if a child has been charged before the court, you can't place the child's name in the newspaper. You can simply say that it was a minor that was arrested, and that you can say that they were granted bail and perhaps the conditions of bail, but not the address, not the name. And in the same way with an adult, if you were charged, they can't put your name in the newsprint, but they ought not to put where you stay in terms of your address. They can simply say that you're from a particular community, and not the specifics where you can actually be identified. So right. I know I just wanted the audience out there to listen. That is not the way we do things in Trinidad, and that was an anomaly that took place there. You should seek some sort of apology, and they should address that situation. But another question is this. You obviously worked on the ground. You've interacted with gangs. We have a problem with gangs in this country. We're going to some of the statistics here at some point, just generally. Have the law enforcement and the TTPS put you in a sit down and try to work with you in terms of the information that you've gathered in a positive way, in terms of trying to understand things from the angle that you were able to understand, where you could assist the police and in terms of their modus operandi in treating with the problems that you've discovered? Have they engaged you in that sort of discussion, a
No,
positive discussion?
no, no, no.
So you see, the thing is, it's almost as if you've been vilified and they've stigmatized you, and they see you as a pariah, rather than somebody who is trying to assist and help. Um,
Can I jump in and say that, after doing this for 3 years, I just mentioned beliefs. So one of the biggest criminality courses, university courses from Miami that often works in Belize. When I was in Belize filming, they did reach out to me and they welcomed me down to their head office, not to ask for names of people that are wearing masks, but to get a better understanding of what I've learned through the process of going into these communities. So you would think, and the average human being would think, I have knowledge that I could share. Again, I'm not talking about pinpointing who did what. I'm talking about just any information that I've learned through doing this after 3 years. You think that would be some valuable information. So I'm surprised that the approach they took was I'm the criminal, opposed to I'm the one that can actually shed a little light on what's happening from the ground floor.
exactly. So we're seeing that you had that experience where in another country, rather than vilify you, or rather than investigate you and look at you in a negative way, they've embraced what you're doing and they try to work with some of the information and the academia that you've been able to acquire.
Yeah, but and also it wasn't in a criminal forum. Like it wasn't like how can we go arrest these people? That's not how it happens. They want to know like what's the best way? Do we need mediators? Do we need counselors? Like what is the best way to better communicate with individuals in the community?
Right. Let's look at some of the statistics. I'm taking this straight out of the Triad Express, the 12th of May 2022. The Minister of National Security, he indicated that in the year 2015, we had 133 gangs in Trinidad and Tobago. In the year 2016, the number increased to 147 gangs. In 2017, 211 gangs. 2018, 221 gangs. 2019, 221 gangs. 2020, 134 gangs. 2021, 134 gangs. Now, that's just numbers. The data also produced members. In 2015, there were 1,084 members of gangs. In 2016, 2,038 members of gangs. 2017, 2,484 members of gangs. 2018, 2,484 members of gangs. 2019, 2,484 members of gangs. 2020, 1,056 members. 2021, 1,462 members. 2022, 1,462 members. So, I mean, I've called some of the statistics there. Basically, what they're highlighting is the number of gangs in Trinidad and Tobago are in the hundreds, and the numbers of members, it's in the thousands. So clearly, there's something that the gang life is offering these young people that maybe government policy and the establishment hasn't been offering. Otherwise, people aren't attracted to things that don't add value to their existence or their subsistence. Um, it's like ants. Ants are attracted to sweet stuff and sugar. Um, Fish cleave to water. Man is a mammal and he lives on the land. If you have gang membership, it's almost as if there has to be something in the catchment area that is sustaining the lifestyle. Um, do you Are you of the view that enough is being done or more should be done in order to attract young persons out of gang life from what you see? Because you're saying some of them are saying it's a lack of opportunity. Is it that your observation is that if there was another way and an easier way, not necessarily easier, let me not say easier, if there was another way to live a different kind of life, that your interaction tells you that the choice would have been made to exercise that right?
Yes. Well, the way I look at it is sort of one person at a time approach. There's no way you're never going to remove all criminal activity. It's impossible. But I mean, there's got to be something done. Simply sitting back and watching this fire grow bigger and bigger is not going to be the solution to the issue at all.
One of the controversies, and I'm sure you would have been exposed to the information at some point, that is in the public space, is that gang legislation was put in place, and in 2011, the state, the central government at the time, got support from the opposition, and the piece of legislation was passed where it criminalized gang activity, gang-related activity, and gang membership. There was a 5-year sunset clause. So those of you listening out there, it simply means that the lifespan or the life cycle of that piece of legislation, Chris, would have been a 5-year life cycle. It means to say that the provisions of the law that speaks to the illegality of gang-related criminality and the illegality of joining gangs, that would have been couched into writing, legislated for. And it sustained itself until 2016. What happened is simply this. When this legislation was passed, the party that is of the yellow orientation, they got support from the party that was of the red orientation. By 2016, there would have been a reverse of the roles, meaning the party of the red would have formed central government or formed government, hold the seat of office, and the party of the yellow would have been in opposition. By 2018, it was what was needed was a renewal of the legislation, and the then party of the red tried to get support from the party of the yellow to have it renewed, and they weren't getting. And let me highlight very quickly to you what is the support that they needed. We have 41 seats that are being contested at every general election, as will be by September next year. And of the 41 seats, the current breakdown, it's 22 to the red and 19 to the yellow. It means to say, in order to pass piece of legislation into being, and in this case, gang legislation or legislation that criminalizes gang activity, you need at least 25 votes of the 41. So if it is you want 22 seats, you need another perhaps 4 votes from the opposition side, the yellow side, in order to have the legislation passed into life. That was not done in 2018. What we had was 20 in support, which is on the government side, the central government side, and we had an abstinence on the opposition side. So having not boring you with that detail, I'm saying this. We've had a standoff, an inability and an impasse between the opposition and the government, or the sitting party that has assumed office, an impasse where their leadership, both the leaderships in terms of Rowley and Kamla Prasad, can't particularly agree on crime talks. And they can't agree on policy decisions to be made and legislative decisions to be made. So while, there's an analogy, Chris, where when with a lawyer and his clients, when you have a one party holding on to the cow's head and pulling at it, from the client perspective, one client is holding on to the cow's head, he doesn't want to let go of it, and another client is holding on to the tail of the cow and he doesn't want to let go of it, and they're both pulling the cow apart. There's a lawyer who's sitting on a stool under the cow, milking the cow. It's similar to that. Whilst the government and the opposition, whilst the red and the yellow fight each other, the people who are suffering is the general population, the electorate, the people who vote them into power. So what is your observation in terms of, do you think that legislation, in your experience, because you're a well-traveled man, do you think, and your experience in Belize and so on, do you think that legislation changes the culture of gangland, and legislation changes the dynamics of how people relate to each other and how the community support each other?
I think it can. I don't think anything happens immediately. Um, Unfortunately, right now you're sort of in a hole, and I apologize for a lack of a better term, that you need to dig yourself out of. And I'm not certain as to if it's a legislative problem, if it's a government problem. Definitely has to do with parenting as well, and opportunities, and the list could go on and on and on.
Right.
Like, as a realist, I just look at, like, what are some simple goals that can be set and achieved in the coming months that will help better the situation and lower the crime. That's the sort of mentality I have for any problem, big and small. What is the next step? Even with my court case, I'm not thinking a year from now. I'm not thinking about. I'm just thinking about my next court hearing. What can I do to better my situation? And I think one of the first issues that I've encountered here in Trinidad over and over again is accountability. I think most have to understand and acknowledge that crime is a problem in Trinidad. Me documenting it and sharing it as a message is not the crime aspect. Like, isn't it strange that out of, let's say, the 500 people that appeared on my videos, I'm the only one arrested and the only one that has not committed any sort of crime? Like, how do you remove crime? You have to go after the criminals.
Right.
But I'm just not seeing that part. Like, and to go into it deeper, I have about 12 special agents on my case, meaning to arrest me wasn't just one man that came and arrested me. There's 12 full-time agents to arrest me, the messenger. So, I mean, something's broken. Something has to be fixed.
Right. One of the things, if it is we were to examine what a gang is, it's stated in one of in piece of the legislation. It says, and this is the legislation that is no longer in subsisting, right? But it says that a gang means a combination of two or more persons, whether formally or informally, organized, who engage in gang-related activity. So I think it's so easy to define what a gang is in terms of the academic appreciation of two persons agreeing to commit gang-related activity. My next question is, what is gang-related activity? Um, the the preamble to the legislation that once existed or once subsists says that gang activity involves a criminal offense, an attempt to commit an offense, aiding or abetting, counseling or procuring of an offense, or a conspiracy to commit an offense. Um, when we look at the broad terms of it, someone like yourself, you were not charged, you could not be charged under the anti-gang legislation because it doesn't subsist. But the way they couch the language, it's almost as if persons that you interacted with, if it is the legislation was passed into being, it's gang activity is so broadly defined. Um, you could be arrested for aiding, abetting, counseling, or procuring an offense. Aiding and abetting could be simply interpreting the work that you do as is being supportive of um, the activity that these young people engage in. Fortunately for you, the piece of legislation didn't subsist or doesn't subsist at this time, and it could easily brought you into the loop of aiding and abetting or counseling or procuring that sort of activity. Of course, you need investigative material and evidence to support that. Chris, and me saying this is it's so easy to find a law when you want to arrest a man to make life difficult for him. Um, if it is we were to use an international example, Al Capone, he wasn't arrested for gang-related activity. He was arrested for not paying his taxes. They couldn't get him on anything criminal such as gang-related. So they went after him in an area that they could touch him on. They went after him for taxes. So often in our history, when the establishment vilifies someone or they see you in a negative way, they find a way to arrest or to pressure you. Do you feel, and I'm coming back, do you feel that, are you of the belief that perhaps this may have been inspired by the fact that, you're being viewed as somebody who is causing a disruption, a disturbance, and creating problems for the establishment, so much so that they would like to make you as uncomfortable as possible to get you to desist from doing the work that you do.
You said it perfectly, 100%. I riled up the hornet's nest, and I think it was done to me on purpose, publicly, to also discourage others from coming to the country to doing the same thing. If they just let me walk, then there would be, over the course of the next year or two, there are going to be others like me, world travelers, YouTubers, journalists, whatever you'd like to call us,
Right.
that would do the same. But I think the opposite is happening. If you look at the feedback, if you walked with me down the street for an hour, you would see the opposite is happening. The support that I've gotten, people are looking for change. Whatever that change is, they want to be heard. Um, Most people are tired of the crime, men, women, children alike. But you hit the nail on the head. I am 100% sure. Even the initial charges that you spoke about, that was my set of original charges: aiding and abetting a gang and counseling a gang. Those were my when they came in with an arrest warrant for me. Those were my charges exactly, with a few others as well. Now, after one day of questioning, those, we'll call them offenses or charges, were dropped, and I was given the charge of sedition. And you're not the first one to tell me sedition. The offense itself is just to shut someone up.
Right.
We have a lot, loads and loads and loads of messages coming in support of you, and some of them are questionable. I have one saying, "Christmas, you're a shining light." Another one is saying, "It's always difficult to criticize the way anyone survives unless we're willing to provide different avenues for said persons to feed themselves." Another one is saying, "In a country with free education, free healthcare, free school feeding programs, and programs that grant stipend for those attending who come from low income household, is there really an excuse?" Another one is saying, "It starts at home." One is saying, "One love, respect." There are a lot of educated people who won't find jobs, who can't find jobs. In other cases, many find a job in the field they have. Many can't find jobs in the field that they haven't studied or they have studied. Worldwide, there are fewer jobs and fewer good paying jobs. And there's a lot of opportunities, but some youths think they should be paid more, or they just don't want to put in the hard work it takes to move up life. They want everything handed to them. Freedom is a must. I always say the fish rotten from the head. So when the youth see and hear about corruption, they don't want to work. They have no role model to guide them the right way, and to follow they follow the wrong crowd. Parents have a huge role to play in their children's life as well. Now, I want to ask you a question. Based on what you've been through, based on the encounters you've had, tell me something. Are you of the impression that young people just want to sit back and have things come their way, or have you gotten the sense from, based on what they are telling you, that they are seeking some sort of way out and just cannot have a listening audience to help them on their way out?
Yeah, both. There's no doubt there are lazy people, and if you've been lazy your whole life and unmotivated, you definitely need some sort of spark that's going to get you moving in the right direction. But that's not a Trinidad problem. I have high school friends that would rather sit at home and play video games than get a job back in Toronto.
Hmm.
So I mean, there's no doubt. But there's both. There are people that are ambitious and want to have a nice house with a nice car and a nice family. Not everyone wants to sit around all day doing nothing. But I mean, those people that want more are the kind of people that we need to work with, right? Those are the people we need to approach and offer some sort of opportunity.
Yeah,
We can't classify everyone in the same standard, the same position.
I understand what you're saying. Really.
Chris, when we look at the statistics,
Before we continue, the phone has been lighting up. Are you willing to take telephone calls?
Yeah. Well, if you're asking me, the answer is always yes.
Okay, great. So, folks, you can still continue calling me at 222-8255 or our toll-free number, 866-525-1099. I'll take your calls as soon as you come in. Go ahead, Farid.
Chris, when we look at the national statistics, the number of persons that are murdered in this country on a year-to-year basis. In the year 2016, we had 462 murders. In the year 2017, 495 murders. In 2018, 517 murders. In 2019, 536 murders. The murder rate is excessively high for a population of 1.2 million people. Um, it's safe to say that we live in a violent society, and the narrative that the politicians carry and the narratives that the TTPS carry is that a lot of these murders are gang related because you're a member of a gang and the Sikhs are fighting the Seven and the Rastas are fighting the Muslim, and then there are there are troubles within each gang, so the membership is fighting each other. What you find is when persons like yourself highlight gang life, you're almost giving them an opportunity, a platform. The Trinidad music is seen as a negative thing, so they would never get a mainstream media forum to carry that sort of music. YouTube and I would imagine Facebook and so on, and those platforms that operate, if I say below the radar, so to speak, beyond established media houses, provide them with a forum. Clearly, we have a problem here. Um, the per capita in terms of murders to population, the demographic, when we look at it, we are amongst the highest in the Caribbean. You've been to Jamaica. What are your impressions in terms of Jamaica? Because when we look at the Jamaican statistics, it's 2,000. So, when it is, people say we're not as bad as Jamaica, but the thing is, one person being murdered is a lot. 400 plus each year is a consistency. It's almost as if we can say to ourselves, before the year 2025 begins, we are sure that we're going to have at least 450 murders for the year. That is not a good signal to be sending to international tourists. The World Travel Advisory has placed us on a negative list for a number of years. We've seen where the American Embassy have highlighted that they don't encourage their citizens to travel in certain areas, to frequent certain areas beyond certain hours, to travel alone. They ought to have arranged transportation. So it's almost like the tourists that occupy the hotels, the main hotels in this country. They have to come here always with the salvo that we can be here, but stay within certain parameters. What is your view in terms of? Do you think that it's education in itself is enough? Do you think that we need more state-assisted and non-government organization support in creating opportunities that could distract persons away from the negative side of gang life? Because I think there may very well be positive coming out of it.
So let's just look at this as problem solution. Problem is crime is so high, right? We have maybe 50 communities that are what they call high risk or hot right now. I personally believe that you should try different methods. Do little case studies to see the success rate in different communities. What's wrong in Jamaica is not necessarily, or the solution to what's wrong in Jamaica is not necessarily going to be the solution to what's wrong in Trinidad. Crime is crime, but we need different solutions to the problem. So, I mean, I'm not in charge. I'm not in politics at all. I have zero interest in politics, although some people have thought I've come here to sort of showcase the deficiencies in politics. But what I think is different methods need to be implemented over the course of 6 months, 12 months to see the outcome. I've said this before, and I can share this again. I'm in Jamaica quite often. I love the Caribbean. There's a place called August Town and that's where the artist, the singer Sizzla is from. If anybody knows who Sizzla is,
Yeah.
Augusttown for years was ranked the #1 most murderous um, area, hood, neighborhood, whatever you'd like to call it. Now, what they did over the last 3 years, they implemented their people walking through the community wearing a vest, almost like a lime or neon green construction vest. Now, these are appointed seniors from the community, not police officers, but appointed people. And every day when putting on that vest, they become almost like a superhero to the community. So if you're angry with your neighbor, or you think somebody stole some fruit from your tree, rather than go to the police, or rather than start a confrontation, you go to somebody with a vest and ask for their opinion, get a little cooling down time, and again, like a mediator, somebody that's in the community that's well known. Some of these people are also ex criminals, they've done time, so they're well respected amongst the current criminals. Now, over the course of the last 3 years since they've implemented this, there has not been one death in Augusttown. So Augusttown found something that's going to work, that works well for them. There's no cost other than actually having the vests. What is the cost of buying 50 vests? And they have weekly meetups, and they're not giving the vest to everyone. They want to make sure the people they give it to are well respected in the community. So, I mean, that's one example of something that they tested in one community in Jamaica that made a real difference. So my belief is that similar type projects need to be tried and tested here in Trinidad.
All right. I want to touch on a particular area. I share what you're saying. It sounds very positive. Um, there's a lot of hypocrisy, and there's a perceived hypocrisy that the politicians work with the gang members, or the gang leaders in some ways. Um, where does the financing come for a gang leader to sustain himself and to sustain the person's his membership? Maybe in a more direct way, a gang leader needs resources in order to lead. You can't lead people and they are hungry, and you can't lead people and you can't and unable to provide for them. Um, in other words, people aren't attracted to suffering. They would tend to link themselves to the people who are doing well. So it's almost as if, we say that when the tide is high, it lifts all the vessels in the ocean. It doesn't lift some. So if you surround yourself in waters that are stagnant, you will stagnate. Um, Allow me to say this, and I'm taking this from the Sunday uh, Guardian, February 17, 2019. An article by Renuka Singh. Now, Chris, the reason why I'm quoting this is I don't want to suffer the same fate that you suffered. And it be said that I'm putting unsubstantiated information out there. This article reads, lucrative deals for alleged gang leaders. And I'm just reading a few excerpts, right? A top secret national security document, which identifies several of the men arrested during last week's anti-gang sweep, shows the same men benefiting from lucrative government contracts. It goes on to say it has been a problem for the past 14 years, where gangs fight to get their claws into state contracts, which is the catalyst for gang wars and increased homicides. In other words, when a gang gets a contract from the state pays millions of dollars to have this contract executed. So gang leaders may pose as, or they may be registered as registered contractors, builders, and they get a contract to build something, and they get paid millions of dollars to do that. So the gang leader now, he gets all this cash in hand. He takes the cash, I would imagine, like every businessman, if that gang activity is his trade. With the cash, he's able to live a good life, build a proper house, own cars, look after himself. And then if you're building a wall of protection, a layer of protection around you, as we read and we see in movies, the Don would tend to protect the community, and tend to look look after them, because if somebody comes there to do them anything, you create an army of persons around you. I guess you call that army members. And when I read on here, it says that gangs obtain $1 million contracts through the Housing Development Corporation, the Unemployment Relief Program, and Community-Based Environmental Protection and Enhancement Program. So we call that by the acronyms in Trinidad and Tobago, HDC, URP, CPEP. According to the report, acquisition of government contracts by known gang members. So we have these state institutions, the HDC, the URP, the CPEP. They are gang members acquire contracts under these umbrella organizations. Guardian Media understands that the People's Partnership Cabinet of Cabinet Persad was provided with documents and warned that the fight for government contracts would lead to increased gang warfare. So it's almost as if the state is being hypocritical. You're providing contracts to the gang leaders or the gangs, and you're giving them the financial clout and wherewithal through these contracts to survive. So the bloodline of gang activity is money. And if the money is being provided in through state contracts, then persons like yourself who find yourself being charged for sedition and publishing, seditious material and so on, it's almost as if it's hypocrisy that you're penalizing a man like yourself when they are doing far worse, or alleged to be doing far worse in their approach. The same article, Chris, says that the listing shows contracts obtained by Anthony Boney, Cedric Burke, Ansel Chemist Villafana, Kenneth Spanish Rodriguez, all of whom were arrested last week. So as far back as 2019, right? And 2019, these persons were the beneficiaries of state contracts. They were getting contracts, and these guys I'm calling it Anthony Boombase Boney, Cedric Burke, Ansel Chemist Villafana, and Kenneth Spanish Rodriguez. These are persons that were arrested, questioned, but how do they find themselves in receipt of $1 million contracts, and what do they do with the funding? These are some of the questions that should be asked, because if you have the view that they are negative, gangs are negative, why are you providing them with contracts and providing contracts as a platform for people who engage in negativity? If it is, you interpret them as negative people and persons who should not be supported and they should be arrested and so on. At the same time, surely you can find personnel or find people that you can hand contracts to who would not in any way use it for negative purposes. Sometimes it gives rise to the notion that the state could be supplying them with these contracts, because indirectly you depend on these gang leaders to support your electoral machinery during an election time, meaning that they control segments of East Port of Spain, segments of Maloney, La Hoqueta, Embarcadero and South, sea lots, that South Port of Spain, East Port of Spain, that actually they are the persons going to vote you into power. They're going to give you another 5 years. Do you see it as there is a level of hypocrisy within the society in terms of we use the gangs conveniently. We want them to vote to come out and vote for us during an electoral season. But when outside of the voting process, once I've assumed the seat of office and I'm comfortable in office, then I pursue legislation that is geared towards condemning them. And I instruct the police, or I, through regulation and through law and through police action, put pressure on them through the air.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt it happens, right? I didn't witness it happening exactly myself, but there's no doubt it happens. Even without you stating those facts, we know that. Now, as to why does it happen, as you mentioned, it could be a vote thing. It could be a dozen other things. We don't know the reasoning behind it, but I mean, corruption around the world is is very much possible. But your initial question was like how do gangs fund themselves? You know, these gangs in fact are illegal businesses, right? Selling
Yeah,
drugs, committing crimes. That is the way that they turn a profit.
right. There has been a big dialogue in terms of the amount of guns and ammunition that is within the country. Um, Assistant Commissioner Ford had indicated that every year the state or the police, that is, the police would seize 1,000 guns every year, and the amount of bullets that are in circulation, it amounts to almost 18,000 bullets. When questions are asked of the National Security Minister, where is it coming from? He said that they have evidence that it's coming from legitimate ports of entry. So it's not as if it's coming in. Trinidad is an island, and therefore we are accessible by sea along every perimeter of this island. It's not like Canada, where you're landlocked in certain areas and you have border control. It's almost difficult to control the seas. 24/7, to have 24/7 surveillance. It's always more of a problem than if you're controlling a border. Um, it is in the public space, Chris, that our ports of entry are the most porous areas, or lawful ports of entry. I want to read something that I got here from the Express newspaper. It's dated the 5th of December 2022. And it says here, the Port of Port of Spain said yesterday that it is the only seaport in Trinidad and Tobago with a fully operational fixed scanner or fixed container scanner. The Port Authority of Port of Spain, or the Port of Port of Spain, issued the news release following an article in the Express last week in which the Customs and Excise Controller, Marcial, referred to the absence of scanners at ports in the country. So, and this is the point I'm making. Ask how many containers are scanned. Marcial replied, we now have operational the fixed scanner only at the Port of Spain, the Port of Port of Spain, and from January to August, we've scanned 3,998 containers out of 23,000 containers. So if it is, Chris, we were to look at the fraction there, roughly 3,998 containers were scanned from 23,000. That percentile is what? Almost 1 in 6 containers, if we do a rough extrapolation. So you imagine of the containers. A container is not the size of a matchbox. It's not the size of a Buster soft drink. It's not the size of it's not a small box. A container is a huge cargo crane sort of like structure that can perhaps hold an entire house or hold the contents of a house. And in these containers, if 23,000 come through the port, and you're checking 1 in every 6, clearly there is an avenue for corruption, and we can't blame the gangs for the entries of those gangs, those guns and ammunition. It's clear that the opportunity for contraband, for guns and ammunition, for unlawful items to enter the country subsist at the very ports of entry, the legal ports of entry that we have precepted officers whose responsibility is to check. And when it is we check 1 in 6, it doesn't augur well. It gives rise to the basis that it is very possible, highly probable, that guns can come through. So the statistic that illegal guns enter from lawful ports, it's quite believable. The nexus between that ratio and what is happening is it's a ready nexus. Are you of the view that gangs and people in East Port of Spain, people in the depressed communities around the country, not just East Port of Spain, they are an easy scapegoat and it's easy to blame them for what is happening, and to blame it on the so-called gang life, um, for the society disintegrating and falling apart, than the establishment, meaning the persons who are precepted to do their job not doing as they should.
Yeah, I think both parties are to blame. There's no doubt we're never going to stop blaming the criminals. But I mean, there are responsibilities, especially somewhere like that, a port of entry that's like you'd have to question yourself and ask like, how long is a scan, and why can't 100% of these big shipments containers be searched? Criminals will always find a different way to get the items here, but there's no doubt that they are coming on shipments. That would be my presumption. These guns are not coming one at a time. Neither are the drugs. So I mean, that's something that would have to be looked into further.
Tell me something. Let me interject here. Loads and loads of messages are coming in. Based on what you guys are talking about now, I can agree that corruption is from top to, to the bottom, right? Top down. And just based on, I'm reading some of the comments here, just based on Chris' videos, you can see these communities don't have the means to bring in all the guns you see on the streets. It's clearly coming from higher up. More are just Most are just pawns in a game that they aren't even aware they are playing. Even the police are pawns. Now my question to you, Chris, is based on what you've been through, what you were doing, and then ended up with the experiences of a confrontation with the law. Tell me, is that a deterrent? Will you continue, or is it inspirational for you to do more?
No, more, and more, and more, and more, and more, and more. I really am self motivated or obsessed. I really don't need another reason to be motivated to do what I do.
Mhm.
Um, Unfortunately, that my cameras and laptop and phone have been taken away as evidence. So that is putting a slight hiccup in my ability to get out and film like I normally would.
Mhm.
But no, there's no stopping me. This is just a little hiccup in my roadmap called life.
I hear you. I hear you. Farid.
Chris, when we and I'm saying this purely for the public listening out there, there's so much is being said that the gang legislation is key to limiting the levels of criminality and constraining criminals and so on. Um, the very Sedition Act that exists, and I'm not getting into your case. In no way am I. That is what we call sub judice. Once a matter is before the court, then we ought not to be commenting on the evidence or commenting on the details. What I'm talking about here is purely the existence of the legislation. And that is to the benefit of the listening public, and perhaps we could just make that point that we're an island here. Trinidad and Tobago was once part of the British colonies. We were a British colony as of 1962, and on the 31st of August 1962, we were handed independence. We didn't fight for in the way that persons would go to war in South America and achieve independence. We were handed that. Part of the Britain's position was after the Second World War, they were so deeply in debt, and there was so much pressure in terms of sustaining all the colonies that they had, that they simply wanted to get rid of them in terms of grant them independence and let them be responsible for themselves. You're eliminating and you're shedding fat. So we were part of that process. Of course, the narrative by um, Eric Williams and some of the other historians, local historians, is that we marched and we protested and we insisted we be given independence or we be granted independence. But it's all a question. History is always written by the person, by the victors. It's never written by the defeated. So, having said that, in 1962, we inherited laws, Chris, from that subsisted in the British time when they were in control. We didn't start with a clean slate. Sometimes you get out of a bad marriage and you start with a clean slate. You're looking for something fresh. You're not looking for an old girlfriend from 5, 10 years ago to reunite with her. You're trying to find a new experience where you're going to start all over from scratch. It's not like that with law. So what happened is we inherited the Sedition Ordinance, and the Sedition Act was born out of that ordinance. So the law is created to suit the ethos and the philosophy of the subsisting government. So the British would have created those laws in order to treat with Trinidadians like ourselves here, who would have been very, very antagonistic towards their rule. And we would say things and do things and carry ourselves in a manner that they would deem seditious. So the very way the law is couched is, if it is you say things that antagonizes the establishment or things that you speak against it, they would use the Sedition Ordinance back in its time to arrest you. In a very real way. You see, you've been to the steel band, the steel band and listened to the steel band. We protested in this country using music. The Calypsonians would sing, and they would sing against the colonial powers. They would sing against the colonial secretary. They would sing against the police. And what they would do is, some of the content would challenge the Queen and the policies that were executed in the Caribbean. And the police would go and they would break up the Calypso tents, lock up the Calypsonians and charge them for sedition in the manner that you've been charged, Chris. So what you're facing is nothing new. So we want you to know that Trinidad and Tobago and the people on the street understand what you're facing. And there is support on the ground in terms of, we recognize that sometimes the state uses legislation and provisions to put pressure on persons. They may think they have a strong case, but let the evidence speak for itself. History have a way of absolving persons, history in the end, in retrospect, when you look back on this at 10, 15, 20 years from now, you'll recognize that you were the catalyst, and that little stone that was thrown in the water that created the ripple for other things to happen. Had you not come and done that initially, things may not be the way that it would be in time to come. But we have to let the full narrative run its course. We appreciate what you've been doing. We appreciate the positivity that you've brought to the table. And I don't want you to feel that Trinidad sees you in a negative light. The legislation and the application of legislation through the police, that has a due process that must be followed. And your vindication and how the matter unfolds in the courtroom is a process that we all look forward to. We have to thank you for the positive things that you've been doing. But on another note, and we're back to where we are here, we often look for scapegoats in this country. When I look at another article here, after the coronavirus and what it brought to the world, and after the political troubles that would have besieged the people of Venezuela, we've taken migrants. 16,000 migrants were allowed to live in Trinidad. And because we are so porous in terms of our borders, it's rumored that tens of thousands of persons, Venezuelans, came here and occupied our shores. The police have carried in their narrative that illegal migrants join gangs and they're committing crimes. I'm not doubting that everybody who has found themselves in difficulty would cleave to the persons that assist them, that help them. But we can't paint or canvas and a picture that no good can come from a community, that East Port of Spain is the problem, that persons who are cleaving to others, cleaving to groups for support, and groups that provide that sort of support are committing wrong. A gang may be persons who come together to commit an offense or to assist in gang-related activity, to aid and abet gang-related activity, but it's a question of how do you prove that? Not everybody who, like yourself, who gather with others with the intention to do wrong. The police may perceive it in particular ways. Allow me to quote a stat here, and I'm tying it in here now. We're coming to the last 10 minutes of our program. It was said here in an article by Camille Hunt, November 2020. Griffith, our then commissioner, said illegal migrants joining gangs and committing crimes. And it says here that illegal migrants are joining gangs and committing criminal activity in Trinidad and Tobago, says the Commissioner of Police, Gary Griffith. Griffith, who was speaking during a Trinidad and Tobago Police Service media briefing yesterday, warned that migrants breaking the law will be treated no differently by the police. Within the last year or two, there have been 20 deaths of persons who have been illegal immigrants. So Griffith said that this must not be used as a reason to label or demonize migrants, but he said at the same time, not every migrant that has entered Trinidad and Tobago has proven to be an asset to this country. He goes on to say, I do not know if you ever saw a video footage of her military, but how they treat their own citizens in their own country. But you want to speak about Trinidad and Tobago. He was highlighting that a Venezuelan official was complaining about how the Venezuelans are being treated in Trinidad and Tobago. The point remains that the very gangs that you've been accused of publishing their work, in terms of publishing what they do by putting up YouTube videos and by highlighting what they do. Not all these gangs that are treated as gangs could be gangs. I mean, you've been interacting with positive people who are about positive things. They're not going out there and robbing and stealing and committing crimes and engaging in gang-related activity. And is it that you're seeing both sides of it, that you're seeing people doing positive things too, and they being deemed gangs, but they may not be gang members?
It's so tough. You know, each of these communities that I go to, I spend anywhere from 30 minutes to maybe 6 to 8 hours, but like moving around the community. I would say I'd rarely spend more than 1 hour with somebody. So to know, you know, I really don't know much about them. I don't even know their names for the most part, and I don't ask for their names. So it's very difficult for me to reply based on that. I'm by no means an expert in gangs. So to be honest, when I heard your definition, I was hoping the definition was going to be a lot more thorough than it was. So I really don't know how to answer that question.
The thing with it, Chris,
Yes.
you use the word you're hoping that it should be a lot more thorough.
Right. Well, like the question and the definition, like a gang member is one that participates in gang activity. Like, what does that mean? Like, how do you use the word gang twice? So
I share your view. You see, the definitions tend to be so broad that they're broad because they allows a certain elbow room, a certain space to be able to target persons, I would imagine, and give law enforcement a certain amount of space to broadly incorporate anyone. So when you are charged with something like sedition, you may recognize from the let me just quote it because I know we have an audience that is listening. Section 3(1) of the Sedition Act says, a seditious intention is an intention to bring into hatred or contempt or to excite disaffection against government or the Constitution as by law established in the House of Representatives or the Senate or administration of justice. You can't get broader than that. If it is you're deemed to bring into hatred or contempt or to excite disaffection for the government or the Constitution or the Houses of Parliament, it's almost as if how do you bring into into hatred or contempt these institutions? By what action? So you're publishing something, but by you publishing it and you're interviewing persons, that you're causing people to hate the establishment, hate the government, hate the opposition, hate the Houses of Parliament. That is so broad. It goes on to say, according to 3(2) or section 3(b), a seditious intention is an intention to excite any person to attempt otherwise than by lawful means to procure the alteration of any matter in the state by law established. It goes on to say that it could to raise discontent or disaffection among the inhabitants of Trinidad and Tobago. Do you see yourself as raising, as attempting in any way to cause discontent or disaffection between and among the people in this country?
No, not at all.
Right. And we need not say more. It just reinforces by me reading the provisions there how easy it is to, when you don't have laws that are clear and that laws that highlight the actual things that you do to cause that, to say you're causing disaffection for the state. What is disaffection and how does one actually cause it? What is the action that causes disaffection? How do you define disaffection? So in this country, the law is so loosely defined that it gives a wide discretion to the police as to how to persons they can arrest and they treat with in their view because they don't know what's the intent in your mind when it is you publish and when you highlight. It's the same thing with gang membership.
Well, but like, let me jump in and say that they do know the intention, because if you take the wording out of context and you only listen to one side, that's one thing. But if you listen to any of my videos, and I have 300 plus videos on my channel, you'll hear me repeatedly ask, how do we bring peace to your communities? So right off the bat that my intention is not bad. I'm there to ask questions, right? So the law itself that I'm being charged with, the offense is over 100 years ago. So you can imagine this is a law that was created when horses were walking through the streets, not cars. And it was a century before we had Facebook and Instagram. So it's a very outdated law. And that's one of the reasons. Look, my resume is very long. What I've done for the different communities I've met along the way throughout the last 3 years and prior to that shows that I'm not a vicious man with ill intent. I'm coming to a community to learn, see what's wrong, document, and share with the world, and that's for each and everyone else to watch and to learn.
Well, the final comments that are coming in here is that freedom is a must. Christmas list, freedom is a must.
It's
You
how
know,
quick this
no,
quote has taken the streets as I walk down the streets. Whether I'm wearing the shirt or not,
yeah.
I see fists up in the air and they say freedom is a must. So that's the
Tell me
quote I'm
something. I'm asking a question so that Anomaly can hear me.
Yes.
Seeing that the track has not been officially released and
Yes.
that it was sent to me, can I play it?
Yes, of course. I got permission from the artist as well. They were really excited. We're shooting the music video for that on Friday before I jump on an airplane and head home on the weekend.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you so very much. And let me thank Anomaly Music, Kid Volt, and Anomaly for sharing with me. And of course, I will give it a lot of airplay.
Yeah, amazing. You know what? My mom's been listening to it, telling me she's in tears. First, she wants me home. And second, the support I've got in this country. Her as a mother worried about me. She feels very comfortable knowing I'm in the hands of a community that loves me. So, and I'm sure my mom's probably listening to this right now, Mom.
There's lots and lots of support for what
Yes.
you're doing and,
Yes.
and what you're highlighting. I
Yes.
pray that God will continue to guide you along the way.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
But Chris, we really appreciate the time you've taken to share with us this afternoon. What is your message to other YouTubers and other people who do the work that you do? I'm using this platform, meaning that do you encourage them to come to Trinidad? You encourage them to share our space and to see for themselves? Or this
Yeah,
is
of course. Trinidad is a beautiful country. There's no reason not to come. I'd be a very selfish man if I said don't come when I have the intention of coming over and over and over again, and also bringing my family. What I would do is this: I would encourage YouTubers to do their homework and understand and use myself as an example and realize when you publish content, you're responsible for what you publish. And country to country, there are always some little hidden rules that might be broken. And remember, you're responsible. But more importantly than just the international YouTube community coming, I would recommend and I would suggest and I would shout to the world, the local world here in Trinidad, that you have a beautiful country. Do not wait for international YouTubers to come. Pick up your cameras, pick up your own camera, your iPhone, and start documenting the things that you enjoy the most about your own country. Because look, I go to countries, this is what I do, right? And normally there's a huge community of local YouTubers. Trinidad has a very, very small community. So let's take it upon ourselves, people of Trinidad and Tobago, to showcase and highlight all the beauties that this country has to offer. And then in return, that will be the trickle down effect that will spark the interest from the international audience. So it starts at home, right? Don't follow in my footsteps. You don't need to be interviewing gang members. You can do whatever you feel comfortable, whether it be food or beaches or flora and fauna and fishing, whatever it is. There's so many wonderful things to do here. But I think it all starts with the home. Local YouTubers need to unite and start filming content and really like putting it out there to the world.
Yes, thank you so very much.
We want to say thank you again, Chris. Hopefully, you and I can keep in touch.
Yes.
You say you're going to be back here again, so we will invite you again. Hopefully, you would come and join us at this forum, and we can share a little bit more in terms of your experiences. We look forward to spending some more time with you. You're a very likable, lovable guy, and we want you to know that you're liked and loved here in Trinidad.
I appreciate that, and I promise you, my heart, nothing has been tainted. Despite all of this going on, I love Trinidad, and there's nothing that will stop me from coming back, except for if somebody at the airport says no, I can't enter. Otherwise, I'm here. I'll be here for the rest of my life, coming back to revisit. I love Trinidad and Tobago, guys. Thank you for being a platform in which I can share some of the ideas that I witnessed here. I greatly appreciate you both.
Okay, thank you so very much, Chris.
Okay.
Thank you so much. To the listening public, we've had for the past hour and 45 minutes the lovable Christmas list. And thank you for sharing your time as an audience with us. We look forward to seeing you again and you listening into our weekly program. Thank you so much. Chris, blessings. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fareed. Thank you, Chris, once again. That's it for today's edition of HartTalk with Fareed Ali and our special guest, Christmas List.